Welcome back to my discussion of NAEP. This is part 2 in which I'll discuss how NAEP test items are constructed, what the achievement levels NAEP reports mean, and the sampling process employed by NAEP. I'm Dr. Deborah Owens, literacy professor and education policy researcher, and it's time for a little tea, as in truth, in education. Understanding how NAEP assessments are designed is a little like taking an applied statistics course. As stated on the NAEP website, the TDW, technical documentation on the web, is written for researchers and assumes knowledge of educational measurement and testing. Some of the terms you'll need to understand if you're brave enough to engage in the technical documentation are items like analysis via algorithmic scoring, a paired jackknife replicate variance procedure, and scale score distributions. Well, this type of technical documentation is routine and required for any standardized instrument or assessment. While the technical details are standard fare for those involved in educational measurement and instrumentation, most people will find the documentation about how NAEP develops test items to be a little perplexing. So I'll try to explain some of the salient points of the process. NAEP does follow a very specific protocol for developing their assessments. This begins with the National Assessment Governing Board. Their role is to establish a framework for the assessments. Once the framework is established, the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, creates test items based on this framework. Now, I want to emphasize that not one curriculum or curricular approach serves as the basis for NAEP test items or questions. Not curricular methodologies regarding teaching reading, not programs touted as being aligned with the Common Core state standards, no specific curriculum whatsoever. Some 300 people are involved in the process of creating test items and questions. This is a broad range of individuals, which includes experts in the various subject areas assessed in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. Because there is no established curriculum that is the basis for NAEP test items and questions, it would seem logical that experts would use standards for learning from national professional organizations like the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics or the International Literacy Association, ILA, among others, and their own expertise in their respective subjects. So it seems that while NAEP was originally designed to assess what students in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade know and can do, it is now being designed to assess what experts believe students should know and should be able to do in various subject areas. Once the NCES establishes the test items and questions to be included on NAEP assessments, they are thoroughly reviewed and piloted to establish statistical validity. One of the most consequential criticisms of the NAEP testing program is how academic achievement levels are reported on the nation's report card. Results are reported as percentages of students performing at 3 NAEP achievement levels: basic, proficient, and advanced. Scoring at the proficient level, according to NAEP, demonstrates solid performance and competence over challenging subject matter. Proficient achievement does not represent grade level proficiency. In fact, in 2017, NCES Commissioner Peggy Carr stated that the basic level is a better indicator of grade level performance than proficient. In other words, the basic achievement level is synonymous with the basic grade level knowledge for students in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. Proficient reflects challenging content, which may be interpreted as being above grade level. As headlines routinely slam schools when NAEP scores are reported on the nation's report card, the stories routinely emphasize the dismal percentages of students performing below the proficient level. The percentages of students performing at the basic level, which we now know as the grade level, are dismissed. This concern about the misleading nature of the proficient level is not just my opinion. Tom Lovelace of the Brookings Institute stated in his commentary, The NAEP Proficiency Myth, the NAEP ranking of proficient is not synonymous with grade level. He went on to say, scholarly panels have reviewed the NAEP achievement standards and found them flawed. According to Lovelace, the highest scoring nations in the world would appear to be mediocre or poor performers if judged by the NAEP proficient standards. NAEP employs a sampling method for its testing program. According to the NAEP website, for assessments to report national results, the sample is between 10,000 and 20,000 students for each grade level test, 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. Now, a sampling method is common practice for large-scale research projects intended to gather data and extrapolate findings based on that data. For the purpose of explaining how this works with the NAEP testing program, let's consider the 4th grade reading assessment. Between 10,000 and 20,000 4th graders participate in this assessment. This may sound like a lot, but consider this. There are about 4 million 4th graders in the United States, according to census data. That means that less than 1/2 of 1% of all 4th graders in the United States take the reading portion of the NAEP assessment. Let me say this again. Less than 1/2 of 1% of all 4th graders in the United States take the reading portion of the NAEP assessment. And this minuscule percentage of students is the source of data that determines the perceived success or failure of our nation's schools regarding how well or how poorly our children are reading. And then there's this from the NAEP website. NAEP achievement levels are set by the National Assessment Governing Board based on the collective judgments of a broadly representative panel of teachers, education specialists, and members of the general public. The authorizing legislation for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, requires that NAEP achievement levels be used on a trial basis until the commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, determines that the achievement levels are reasonable, valid, and informative to the public. The NCES commissioner's determination is to be based on a congressionally mandated, rigorous, and independent evaluation. The latest evaluation of the NAEP achievement levels was conducted by a committee convened by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in 2016. The evaluation concluded that further evidence should be gathered to determine whether the NAEP achievement levels are reasonable, valid, and informative. Accordingly, the NCES commissioner determined that the trial status of the NAEP achievement levels should be maintained at this time. Yes, you heard that right. The way NAEP ranks achievement is still under review. In other words, the rankings have not been determined to be valid. So I guess the question is this: why do we still envision NAEP as the gold standard in assessments of student achievement? And why do we give it so much weight in determining the state of education in the United States? I'll conclude with this. I agree with Dr. David Berliner, who co-authored the book, The Manufactured Crisis: Myths, Fraud, and the Attack on America's Public Schools with Bruce Biddle in 1996, and has since written the book 50 Myths and Lies That Threaten America's Public Schools with Gene Glass in 2014. He explained in a speech at Ohio State University, standardized academic testing is measuring your state's housing policy, its wages and jobs policy, its social service and social welfare budget, its court system, its Medicaid budget, and so forth. He went on to say, if you think that educational policy can be made to improve schools without concerns for these other factors, you want what rarely was and rarely will be. Schools are embedded in the society in which we live. As Diane Ravitch, dedicated advocate for public education, stated in her book, The Death and Life of the Great American School System, How Testing and Choice Are Undermining Education, our schools cannot be improved if we ignore the disadvantages associated with poverty that affect children's ability to learn. Thank you for spending a little time with me. Please look forward to future videos, and we'll share some more tea and more truth about education.